Can Thanos defeat Omni-Man? Not only does it pique the curiosity of fans, but it also opens up a dialogue about the nature of strength, will, and ruthlessness. Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the embodiment of cold, calculating power. He is not only a seeker of the Infinity Stones, but also a strategist who has overcome countless powerful foes, including the Hulk, the symbol of pure, brute strength. While the MCU has not fully demonstrated the Mad Titan's full potential, it is clear that Thanos has proven himself superior to the Hulk in terms of control and endurance. If Hulk can crush opponents with a storm of punches, Thanos can do so with far greater precision, discipline, and efficiency. However, when his opponent is Omni-Man, the situation changes completely. Omni-Man is not just strong, he is a storm of destruction in human form. A warrior from Viltrum with enough power to destroy cities, repel a series of superheroes with just a few punches. If Thanos had to face him, the sky would tear under the first punch, and the ground would shake as if the earth were groaning. If it was Omni-Man, Iron Man would no longer have a chance to activate the second armor. If it was Omni-Man, Doctor Strange would probably have to put himself in a time loop to escape death. If it was Omni-Man, Nebula would be crushed, and Spider-Man would probably be reduced to a tattered iron armor in the ashes. Omni-Man strikes faster, harder, and more ferociously than any opponent Thanos has ever faced. Each of his punches combines supersonic speed with matter-breaking power. When he strikes, not only is the air ripped apart, but the very fabric of space itself is compressed by the sheer force of the impact. Omni-Man has smashed massive blocks of rock, destroyed entire armies in seconds, and repelled so-called super soldiers. He moves so fast that the naked eye barely registers it, and his reflexes are enough to counter any physical attack. Thanos, while powerful, has limits. He doesn't have the speed of light or the ability to fly beyond the atmosphere. Thanos' strength in the MCU lies in his durability, hand-to-hand combat, and weapon skills. He defeated Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man at the same time, demonstrating incredible skill and endurance. However, in a fight with Omni-Man, those qualities won't be enough to keep him alive for long. Omni-Man can penetrate Thanos' armor before the Mad Titan can even lift a fist. If this battle were fought in open space, where gravity is not a constraint, the advantage would be almost entirely in Omni-Man's favor. He could drag Thanos into the stratosphere, pierce through miles of atmosphere, and then slam him into the ground at speeds that would shake the surface of the planet. Omni-Man's devastating blows have been enough to blow apart solid steel structures, and there's no evidence that Thanos in the MCU could withstand that kind of force without being injured. However, if Thanos used his twin swords in Endgame, the situation could change somewhat. Those swords were sharp enough to block Stormbreaker, and even crack Captain America's shield, a feat few weapons can achieve. In Thanos' hands, the weapon is not just a tool, but an extension of his fighting instinct. If he can use his composure and strategy, he can create a temporary balance. A well-placed slash can injure Omni-Man, as no matter how strong, the Viltrumite body is not completely invulnerable. If this battle were fought in open space, where gravity is not a constraint, the advantage would be almost entirely in Omni-Man's favor. He could drag Thanos into the stratosphere, pierce through miles of atmosphere, and then slam him into the ground at speeds that would shake the surface of the planet. Omni-Man's devastating blows have been enough to blow apart solid steel structures, and there's no evidence that Thanos in the MCU could withstand that kind of force without being injured. However, if Thanos used his twin swords in Endgame, the situation could change somewhat. Those swords were sharp enough to block Stormbreaker, and even crack Captain America's shield, a feat few weapons can achieve. In Thanos' hands, the weapon is not just a tool, but an extension of his fighting instinct. If he can use his composure and strategy, he can create a temporary balance. A precise slash can injure Omni-Man, because no matter how strong, the Viltrumite body is not completely invulnerable. But the core difference lies in the fighting mentality. Omni-Man fights with a fast, fierce instinct without holding back emotions. Meanwhile, Thanos fights like a cold, calculating, and patient general. However, when his opponent is a warrior who can fly at the speed of sound, shattering dozens of meters of steel with a single strike, that patience will become a burden. All of Thanos' tactics will be crushed by the overwhelming speed. If Thanos wears the Infinity Gauntlet, the balance of power will tilt completely in his favor. With just a snap of his fingers, Omni-Man can be erased from existence. But if we consider only the physical front, Omni-Man has an absolute advantage. He is not only stronger, but also moves faster and attacks more effectively. His punches don't just create wounds, but are pressure explosions that can destroy the structure of the surrounding land. The fight between these two might last only a few minutes, but every second that passes will be a devastating one. Thanos will try to counterattack, using every fighting skill to gain the upper hand, but sooner or later he will be forced into a defensive position. Omni-Man will unleash blow after blow, each punch carrying enough power to crack the planet. When the battle comes to an end, Thanos will realize that he is not facing a man, but a nightmare in the form of a warrior. Omni-Man will not stop until his opponent falls. He will use all his strength, leaving no chance to counterattack. And finally, Thanos, who was once considered the great conqueror, Thanos, stands in the middle of the battlefield, light reflecting off his metal armor, his face showing no fear, only the cold concentration of someone who has faced death 1,000 times and still stands. When Omni-Man rushed forward, the first punch hit Thanos' hand. Space seemed to explode. The impact caused the ground to crack open, and dust and rocks flew high into a giant column of smoke. Omni-Man's next punch was so fast that the naked eye could not follow. Each punch was a shockwave that spread for kilometers. Thanos fell to his knees, but did not fall. He counterattacked with a horizontal punch, the weight of which was enough to blow up the entire steel building. The two collided continuously, creating a series of shockwaves that distorted the surrounding space, as if the entire planet was being distorted. Omni-Man had outstanding speed. He slid behind Thanos, grabbed the collar of his armor, and threw him into the clouds. Thanos fell, creating a hole hundreds of meters deep. But instead of being knocked down, he roared, rushing out of the hole with extraordinary speed. Thanos' punches carried determination and destructive weight, each blow causing the surrounding air to shake. But Omni-Man did not defend. He responded with pure cruelty. He smashed Thanos through the rock, through the city, bringing with him a violent wind strong enough to blow the entire area away. As the battlefield was covered in dust, Thanos stood up, his purple eyes flashing with a cold light. He knew that if he continued to fight in the usual way, he would not win. His tactical instincts arose. He retreated, taking advantage of the terrain, waiting for an opportunity to counterattack. In the moment, Omni-Man charged again. Thanos seized the opportunity, drew his dual swords, and swung horizontally. The slash was strong enough to create a silver streak of light that tore through the wind. Omni-Man was cut across the shoulder. Viltrumite blood sprayed out, red as hot iron. But the wound only made him more violent. Omni-Man's rage exploded. He broke the sword with his bare hands, then grabbed Thanos' head and slammed it into the ground, each impact creating a deafening explosion. The air shook, the planet's surface cracking into a network of cracks as large as a lightning map. He threw Thanos into space, then flew after him, crashing straight into his chest, causing both of them to fall like meteors. The impact turned the land below into a sea of fire. Even so, Thanos did not give up. Heavily injured, he still stood up, picking up the remaining energy glove. Although it was not the Infinity Gauntlet, it was still a symbol of power and unbreakable will. He activated the energy, his body glowing purple. Cosmic energy radiated, causing the surrounding space to contract. Omni-Man charged again, but this time Thanos was ready. He caught the punch in midair, then returned a direct hit that carried all his strength. The force of the impact caused space to stop for a moment. A massive wave of energy swept through, sweeping away everything for miles. Both were thrown into the air. Omni-Man slid across the ground, leaving a deep canyon-like crater, while Thanos knelt, breathing heavily. His body was broken, but his eyes still burned with the will to not retreat. Omni-Man stood up, his face covered in blood but his gaze cold as steel. He approached slowly, each step causing the ground to shake. He knew that this opponent deserved respect, but at the same time, he knew the outcome was certain. When the distance between them was only a few meters, Omni-Man threw a final punch, concentrating all his strength into a single point. Thanos raised his hand to block, but the blow penetrated his defenses, crushed his armor, and pushed him back hundreds of meters before collapsing. The force of the impact caused space to stop for a moment. A massive wave of energy swept through, sweeping away everything for miles. Both were thrown into the air. Omni-Man slid across the ground, leaving a deep canyon-like crater, while Thanos knelt, breathing heavily. His body was broken, but his eyes still burned with the will to not retreat. Omni-Man stood up, his face covered in blood but his gaze cold as steel. He approached slowly, each step causing the ground to shake. He knew that this opponent deserved respect, but at the same time, he knew the outcome was certain. When the distance between them was only a few meters, Omni-Man threw a final punch, concentrating all his strength into a single point. Thanos raised his hand to block, but the blow penetrated his defenses, crushed his armor, and pushed him back hundreds of meters before collapsing. However, where Thanos can access the true power of infinity, when Thanos wears the Infinity Gauntlet, the battle is no longer a physical fight, but a confrontation between the will of a god and the rage of a warrior. The six stones, reality, space, soul, power, time, and mind merge into one, creating a power that surpasses all natural laws. In that moment, Thanos is no longer the conqueror of the Mad Titan. but becomes the essence of the universe, holding the power to decide life and death and the order of existence. Omni-Man, though fast enough to surpass sound and strong enough to crush mountains, still cannot touch him. Thanos can bend space, causing each of Omni-Man's attacks to fly off course, then bend the laws of time to trap his opponent in an endless moment. He can slow down Omni-Man's heartbeat, reverse injuries with just a thought, erase him from the flow of reality. Omni-Man's power, however terrible, is still within the realm of matter. But the power of the Infinity Gauntlet goes beyond that concept. Thanos does not need to fight, does not need to defend. He only needs to think, and it becomes reality. A single snap of his fingers can obliterate the entire Viltrumite race, or rewrite history so that Omni-Man never existed. As the light from the Infinity Stones spread, the sky burned in a blinding purple and gold. Omni-Man tried to rush forward through the energy wave, but his body began to disintegrate in the light. Each molecule was pulled apart, melting into nothingness. Thanos looked at him calmly, not with contempt, but with recognition for a worthy warrior. In the final moments before he disappeared, Omni-Man understood that not all power can overcome absolute will. The Infinity Gauntlet is the limit of the universe, and Thanos, with it in his hands, is the very definition of omnipotence. Omni-Man is the master in physical combat, but a Thanos-wielding gauntlet would win hands down.